Good night, one, good night, all, and welcome to a Holy Cross production, Beyond the Pew, where we get a youth perspective at the foot of the cross. So, my name is Ferguson, and I'm here with my co host,
Lauren Clark.
and we will be leading the conversation. We have some insight, some impactful things that we believe will really help guide young people through. And we would love for you guys to be a part of the conversation. This is the first of many episodes. We're starting a good thing, and we want to keep it going.
Definitely.
So Lauren will introduce the topics and what's on the agenda for tonight.
Yes. So we thought it would be fitting to have our first topic surrounding Christian dating. How does that look like? What can we expect? And also getting real life testimony from a couple, but also from our priest, Father Ethan Ferguson. So we have a lot in store and we're so excited.
Yes, and we can do our thing. We can do our thing. I have great expectations that the questions may have us, kind of sweating. But we can make it happen, man. We can make it happen. And so we will have our first panelist.
Yes. We will invite our lovely couple, Dwayne and Janay.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you for joining us. We're so glad to have you.
Yeah, welcome.
So to kick things off, we would just like to ease into the conversation before we get really deep. But can you tell us, how did you two meet?
Who you want to answer that question?
Whoever's most comfortable.
As long as it don't start no fight, yeah.
No man. So basically, it's an interesting story because I feel like we know each other for basically all our life, technically, because we were friends for about a decade from high school time, and then things just transitioned into where we are today. So
Let me tell you the truth.
Yeah, I'm with you, brother.
When I was like in grade 10, right?
Oh Lord.
Which grade she was in?
She would have been in the same grade, but I was in a different school, right? And I was looking to talk to someone. So I might have speak to a cousin maybe, and she might have handed me a
Before you
number, right?
continue, don't say nothing that will incriminate you, because we ain't gonna be there tonight.
I promise you I won't say nothing that I could cost me.
All right, then.
But yeah, during that time, right, that was when I was introduced to her, right? But at the time, right, I didn't feel like I was.
It wasn't on their end.
No, it wasn't even that, I felt like the way that she looked, I was like, nah, she probably ain't gonna like me. So I just kind of threw it away.
Oh, I know about that. I know about that.
So I infiltrated the friend zone.
Oh, that's my other strategy.
We love the strategy.
Yeah, but that's how I knew her.
Yes.
And okay, that's kind of interesting. Was it difficult?
No, it really wasn't nothing in the beginning, right? We were just friends. Like legit, just friends. Plenty life happening too.
And through knowing, you get to know somebody really who they are when you're that friend first. Because
That's
a
a good
lot
point.
of times people put up a facade and it takes a lot of time to break through that facade. But when you're just a friend,
Yeah.
that facade ain't really
It's
there.
just unfiltered.
Yeah,
It is what it is.
Yeah. So you get to know the real person. So I think that's a key thing,
Do you feel as though that facade is like a defense mechanism, a nervous trait?
I think that it may be a different thing for different people. It's a tool that could be used for good and for bad. That's how I could put it.
I also feel like nobody really shows their true colors right off bat.
No,
Right.
not if you're smart.
Yeah, you don't show your true colors right off bat,
See what
right?
I say?
So sometimes you gotta
That'll be
weed people
smart.
out, coming in as a friend first. Because I feel like honestly, right, even in a relationship, right, it really don't make sense being in a relationship with someone who you have to spend the rest of your life with if they really ain't your friend first.
Yeah,
See what I
true.
say? Yeah.
And
So
that is a very good point. Because how to put it? In our culture, sometimes we look at the wrong things that attract us to people. And when we get involved in these situations, after all of the fun. We found like it'll be a little weird, but after all of the fun, right? After the first or the second time, then you look at this person and you're like, and I say right away, right? But then you look at these people like, is this really what I want?
Yeah, I got what you're saying too, right? Because at the end of the day, right, life is real, right?
Yeah.
And not every day, everybody could be into rainbows and ponies and all of that stuff, right? You could be in a bad mood sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And then that person on the side is gonna annoy you to the daylights, you know? And the only thing at the end of the day that is, as I do you,
Boy,
it's not playing.
I wanted to know a couple of strays.
But to be real, at the end of the day, you really, after you get upset and life happens or whatever, you need to have a person in your corner who actually there for you, I guess, and is your friend above all things that you could trust and you could rely on. That exceeds love, because you will feel love every day.
Yeah.
I really love how you said real life happens, because oftentimes marriage is painted as all roses and flowers, and it's not really that. Right. It's hard work, and like you said, the person will annoy you, and sometimes people, in a sense, they run away from that or they shy away from that instead of communicating and working through it. So I love that you all were being very honest from the jump.
That M-word is a serious word.
Let me tell you, let me just interject. This may not be one of the topics, but I feel like as a female, I know that a lot of times females are very concerned about marriage and ticking time and ticking clocks and whatever. But the best thing I can say to that is don't rush it. Don't force it. Because at the end of the day, the thought will always be in the back of your mind that you had to force this person to make that decision. And when raw day come, you don't want to give them the opportunity or the space to say, well,
I never marry you, no way.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Or you forced me, I wasn't ready for this or whatever. So you don't
Just
know
raw day
that.
coming.
Yeah.
So our next question is, how do you decipher between intentional dating versus situationships? And situationships is very popular in our culture.
Who go first?
And let me just say, let me just stick in a qualification in there. JJ ain't getting no insurance. Don't start fighting in hell. We can't take care of nobody.
No, man.
Okay, so, right? I don't know what the age group is inside there, right?
We all adults.
But I'm gonna say, right?
I would say they help you along the lines between 20 and, father a little on the
Okay, well,
20,
So we right between 20 and 5. Right?
Right.
Okay.
Hey, that's a good man.
And so, right, I feel like when you just come out of school, right, you spend 18 years of your life, right, being controlled by your parents, right? You spend the next, let's say, 18 to 30, 12 years, right, learning to be an adult, right? So I feel like from then to being 30, right, there's a lot of situationships, right, where you just learning what kind of relationships you need to be in.
Like trial and error.
Yeah.
Right.
But I almost feel like, I could be wrong, for me though,
Yeah.
by 30, after the hell that I would have been through, right, I knew by 30, more or less, right? No, it wasn't right? But by 30, right, I kind of knew the kind of person I wanted to be with. I also realized, though, that to be in a real relationship, I kind of had to know myself first.
Yeah.
You can't know what you want unless you know who you are first.
That's a one.
Yeah.
That's a one. Yeah, because the difficulty with that, you kind of damage people along the way.
Yeah.
And there's a saying that hurt people.
Very true.
And if you don't know yourself, if you are not on the road to discovering yourself, some people have discretion.
Yeah.
Some people have intuition. And sometimes a partner, they may address you in a way by which they feel as though you need. And being unable to recognize that need will cause some friction, some tugging, some pulling, some rowing.
Yeah.
And if you're like me, some cussing, I don't know. Yeah, that's That's a serious thing.
No, I agree, and it's good that you use the word partner, right? Because when we talk about, I feel like when people talk about marriage and a relationship, partner is the word that should be used because marriage and relationships are about love, but we have relationships with everybody,
Yeah.
right? But when you get into a relationship with someone again that you want to spend your whole life with, right? I feel like that's a partner. I feel like when you have bills, you all work together on that. When you have activities that you want to do, right, or you want to grow, y'all work together on that. That's a partner, you know. I feel like being a partner is something that you should strive for, more than just the word marriage. Partner is a big part of that. I feel like the difference between situationships and relationships is one you're looking for a partner and one you are looking for a partner.
And I heard you mention something, right? It's kind of slightly off topic, but I know it's going to spark an age-long debate.
Oh boy.
Right? You mentioned bills, and for our time, our parents' time, our grandfather's time, I know the whole question about how bills are split up. That whole 50-50 situation. What do you guys think about that?
Right? We talk about marriage, right? And they say marriage is when you bring two people together, right? To be one, right? With the Lord, right? So how you can split your bills, right? If you use one. You see what I'm saying? Whatever you make.
Ladies.
I don't know if y'all was watch our thing, but that's you pulling yourself into it.
No, but
Kind of just you wait about to be splitting no bills with one person.
yeah, that 100-100 situation, and we have to move on to the next segment, right?
yes.
But that 100-100 situation, that is, it kills that whole argument, right? Because you pick up where I fall down.
I want to say something about that though. The 100 thing is cool, right? But when you do that, you and your partner have to be on the same accord, right? You can't have somebody who want to splurge your money, right, and hold you down. You know, y'all equally have to be able to say, okay, we got these bills to pay. I want this or I want that. Okay, how we going to get this and how we going to get that? We split, all the money is ours, so we choose when we going to get this. But it can't be one person saying, you can't spend this. Don't never touch this money, right? And then they go and they
What is
spend
yours
it.
is mine, and what is mine is mine.
You know,
I'll
it
be
gotta be
selfish.
equal. Yeah,
I'll
it
be
gotta be equal.
selfish. Yeah.
That's important.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. The conversation, I mean, it was just natural.
Yeah.
And right now, we will be moving into our next segment.
Yes, we will. And for the next segment, we are bringing on Father Ferguson. So thank you so much, Dwayne and Janay.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
It was fun.
What are you doing? You ain't get on your collar tonight.
No. I local father.
Necessarily, huh? Boy, these questions. These covered ruling.
So, Father, we are just going to get straight into the meat of the matter.
Yeah.
So, it's all over social media. We see it in our everyday life. How, as Christians, should we tackle the feeling of lust?
Ooh. Oh wow.
That's heavy, you know.
In the deep
Go
end,
straight
in
to
the
it,
deep
yeah.
end. I think first and foremost, it is important to acknowledge certain things. For a long time, we spent a lot of time negating and pretending.
It doesn't exist.
Exactly. And I think that is the first part of that challenge.
Yeah.
I think as young people, as we go through puberty and as we grow into adults, these things come with hormonal changes.
That
And
frightens out.
Yeah.
there's certain realities that is just a part of growing up. It's natural to look at someone and desire them. I think when it comes to our faith and when it comes to being a Christian or striving to be that, it is not to say that you're a perfect person. It's not to say we live in a perfect world. it is to begin to see ourselves differently, and to not see people as entities to be conquered,
As objects.
as
yeah.
objects of affection
Yeah.
or objects of lust, but rather to see the other person with dignity and respect. And that's the issue with lust.
Yeah.
Lust degrades the other person.
I like that
It
you
strips
said
them
that.
of their humanity, and it makes them an object to be used as rather than a person to know, and someone to experience, and someone to build relationship with. And so lust is not an issue for God because those feelings are bad. It's an issue for God because it robs us of what it means to be in relationship with each other. It robs us of the privilege of what it means to know each other. It robs us of the privilege of true love if we are only looking at the surface.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? And it's interesting you would say puberty. Puberty is something all of us go through, right? And I believe in our culture, we do a great job at denying.
Of course.
And if you don't know what you're doing, you fall right into the trap.
And especially for young men growing up in our culture, we are surrounded by what we call toxic masculinity.
Oh yeah.
So the toxic masculinity kind of forces us into that place that even if that's not what you're looking at, because of the uncle or the father or the cousin that is older than you, you got to look in that direction too, because
they could think something wrong with you.
Something wrong with you, you know, and we all know for something to be wrong with you,
that's the end of the world.
that's the end of the world. You might as well close up shop and go home. So that's the challenge. Yeah, that's the challenge there. So we don't allow ourselves to grow into our best self because we spend so much time while we are trying to learn ourselves, trying to learn our bodies, trying to learn the people around us. We spend so much time having to meet these various expectations that rob us of the opportunity to really grow into our best selves.
Yeah. I really like how you said that lust, robs us from getting to know the other person.
Correct.
And I could also argue that it also robs us from knowing who we are because essentially we're thinking, and particularly for women, there's so much pressure to look beautiful, right? Society tells us that women's currency and our values and our physical.
Correct.
So as a woman, you might, as a teenager, right, you think, well, I need to look a certain way to get someone's affection and not really thinking of how can I be the best Lauren or, how can I be my best self? What are the characters that I want to exemplify that, make me the best version of who I am? And lust takes that away from you.
And again, you said that, right? And our culture plays a pivotal role in that. Beauty. We get some crazy ideas of what is beauty.
Yeah.
What beauty is, right?
Absolutely.
Our parents, they force the workplace, right? There is a fictional sense of what is beauty. And this fictional sense takes us down a rabbit hole.
It does.
Because then we mold what we like, or we mold what we think we like, based off of what people are telling us. This is what you should like.
Correct. And it's a dangerous thing because, that verse in the Psalm that says that we are wonderfully and fearfully made, that is a verse that denounces what the media strikes to us as what is beautiful. Because it affirms our humanity, no matter where you are in the journey. So, even if you're dark and you got picky head and
tight cousins,
tight cousins, all that stuff. Even if you're fair skin or conky Joe or whatever we want to call it.
Well, we know in the Bahamas, our parents teach us that.
Well, in the Bahamas, we are not racist, but we're colorists.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we are very much a color-centered people, and so a bright person and a dark person have a child, and we want to know what color you think the
That's
baby
the first
be.
thing.
Yeah.
None of the baby has you.
No, we want so, and all of this has to do with our version, the distorted view of what we see beauty as. So what Scripture teaches us is to go back to the basics, go back to God's vision of ourselves. And the vision that God gives to us is that no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter how you look, because I made you, you are beautiful. And if we begin to teach our children, our young people, our young ladies, our young men this, they don't have to conform to the media's model of what beauty looks like. And this is what I love. I'm seeing it, we are, as a culture and as a people, and as people become more educated, more exposed, you see people kind of going back to their roots. So you see more natural hairstyles, and you see people,
More,
just
what we call a woke culture.
Yeah, it speaks to the insecurity that we have within ourselves, and I think
And that's what it goes to.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it goes back to. And we have these insecurities because we see in the culture, the men want a certain type of woman, or they feel a certain type of woman is beautiful.
Correct.
And the women feel a certain type of man is
Correct.
handsome. And so
Correct.
we try to mold ourselves to fit
Correct.
this description.
Correct.
And we often end up hurting ourselves in the process.
Yeah.
Correct. Because then you attract someone based on something that is not real, something that is false,
But that's
something
why I
that is
said
not
your first stage
authentic.
got to be at the beach.
Oh, God.
Something that is not authentic. And when it's not that, it's hard to keep that persona that does not exist. And so that carries us down the rut. And then after the lust wears off, because after the good times,
The good
you
times,
don't
when they
have.
gone?
You know, but
When they
then-
gone?
But after the good times, you don't have. After the good times are gone,
What are
then
you left with?
You are left with who the person really is.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so valuable what Dwayne and Janay said, that friendship has to be at the ground,
Yeah.
at the basis, at the core, at the foundation of any relationship. Because after sex wears off, after the lust wears off, after the good times wear off, after the spending money wears off, you are left with who the person is. And you have to live with this person, you have to love this person, and this person has to love you. And sometimes what you are left with, you don't love.
Yeah, and you're talking about marriage, but before we get to marriage, let's talk a little bit more about what are the qualities as Christians we should be looking for when we're dating. The Bible doesn't talk a lot about these are the lists to look for in a boyfriend and a girlfriend, more so in a husband and a wife, but as a priest, what can you tell us that we should look for while we're dating in a relationship?
I'll begin by saying this, and that's a hard question. I begin by saying this. We often look for perfection. That's wrong. We often, I don't know where we get this check-off list that we have, whereas, the person got to be this height, this weight, they got to make this amount of money, they have to be this kind of professional, they have to have this kind of job, or they have to be belonging to this elite kind of family situation.
Settlement. Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
I think it's wrong. That's the only way I could say it. I think that if you are looking for a partner, I think you must begin by looking for a friend. Looking for someone
I've been the damn all night.
Yes.
who loves you at your best,
And your worst.
even when they see you at your worst. And I think that's so important. So we could love somebody when, they doing good and they work the FTX and they live in their best life. No pun intended. you know.
Shots fired.
And they live in their best life and doing well. And then when life begins to happen, like Dwayne and Janay said, when life begins to happen,
Bush crack.
and then, they
God.
end up, now all of a sudden they're not up to your standard anymore.
Right.
But we all have these hills and valleys in life. And I think life is really about the journey. And people can tell you in friendships if they are with you on the journey. Because just how they are with you as a friend is how they will be with you as a partner. And I think that's so important. So in a nutshell, I think you have to look for a friend. So if you have someone who's dependable, who's reliable, who is consistent, someone who's true to you, someone that listens to you, I say this with caution, makes you feel heard and seen, because I think we have almost an obsession of being heard and seen now that is unhealthy, but makes you feel heard and seen, and someone who is a forgiving person, meaning that their feet are feet of clay and they understand their humanity, and as a result of that, they understand yours. Because sometimes we hold people to standards we can't keep. And I think that's
crazy.
That's wrong.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's wrong. So I don't have a checklist, but I think that if you look for a friend, you will find the person that you ought to be with.
Thank you, Father. And thank you. We are bringing this segment to a close. Father has given us something to think about. And I think we ought to take that. And I see you looking at me a little hard, like I'm talking to you.
No. You
Not at
fine.
all.
Yeah, we can deal with that. We will go into our next segment, and our next segment would be a question and answer segment, where we will bring Dwayne and Janay back, and we'll get some questions from the crowd, as well as we'll get some questions that were sent to us previously.
All right.
All right?
Awesome.
For our third segment, we have created an anonymous chat line for persons to submit questions. And our first question for our lovely panelists is, how do we end a connection that we feel isn't a lasting connection while maintaining a good relationship? Who would like to go first?
One more time.
How do we end a connection that we feel isn't a lasting connection while maintaining a good relationship?
Like a friend relationship with the person?
I'm assuming that's what they meant when they typed it, yes.
I guess the best way for it is it takes maturity from both sides and open communication. And it may not, and also giving people space to process what has happened and grieve that y'all are no longer together and that's not a possibility, and then move forward from that. So you can't be selfish. Yeah.
That's a good answer.
Any other responses?
My only response to that is honesty. Like, if you know that you're not interested in someone anymore,
Yeah.
be honest. Don't waste their time,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, time is the most precious thing that we got. Don't waste that. Don't waste my time. Yeah.
I really like that, not wasting the time.
And so the other question is, as previously stated in the podcast about the facade people put on, what do you do when you fall in love with the person they pretend to be and their true colors now show?
I would think also, once the true image of that person emerges, you have a decision to make. And the decision is that if you can pivot in loving
yes.
who that person
Yes,
truly
yes,
is,
yes.
then
Make the jump.
good for you. Make the jump, do what you have to do. But if you come to the realization that this person's persona, character is antithetical to what I need in terms of a partner and to love someone, I think you do have to make a very, very difficult decision. And that honesty that Janay mentioned,
Get
that
yourself in a
honesty is
pickle.
important.
I want 20 seconds. So, right, I also feel like at the basis of all of that is knowing yourself, right? Knowing yourself, knowing what you want to deal with, knowing where you want to go in life. I feel like that's a big part of it, because at the end of the day, right, I mean, there's a million different choices that we could take, right? And we can take them, but that don't mean every choice is a good choice. And I feel like if you know yourself, right, even when you get put in a position where there's something in front of you that you know is not good for you, you'll be able to say, okay, moving forward, this don't stick with my plans. This ain't where I want to be. This ain't what I was grown up with. You know, once you know yourself, you know when it's time to let go. And that's important. Knowing yourself is I personally feel like it's one of the most important parts of a relationship, because if not, you're going to keep on picking people until you figure out what you actually like in yourself, you know?
I really love that answer. So for our last question, and this one is very popular in our culture, Why are people still hooked on their ex?
Let me go away again. Let me go away again.
They hook off potential.
Yeah. Okay. Let me tell you why, right? Because there's no boundaries. That is what it is. Because a lot of times people leave, but they don't leave. They leave a toe, a foot, everything in the door, right?
So they can get back in.
Yeah. And because it's a lot of times because people like to still have choices. That's the problem. People still like to have choices. They want to move forward, but they still scared to commit to moving forward. They still want to be like, well, if this don't work out, I still have plan B. No, you need to get rid of that because it didn't work in the first place. So why you going back there?
Could you say, like, that with your ex? And I'm not advocating.
Yeah.
I play the devil's advocate. You can't beat me. What if you feel a sense of security? That sense of, even though it's a bit difficult, right? But what if you feel that sense of normalcy with your ex? That basically you stepping into the unknown.
Okay, go ahead.
You're stepping into the unknown.
Into the unknown. Yeah, so as what? Sense of security as what?
So, okay, yeah, sorry.
Because you could feel a sense of security and you could be friends with that person, but that means you have to be friends with that person. Boundary. So no touching, no hugging, no. If you get into a new relationship, you're not talking to them about what happened in that relationship, seeking and like all of that stuff is just certain boundaries that you don't cross.
Yeah.
How you would react or be with a regular friend that you never had any romantic connection with, that's how you have to now move them into that category and don't step back.
I also want to say, right? I feel like most human beings, right? Nobody grew up in a perfect world, right? We all go through bad things. All of us go through toxic situations. I feel like the first beginning relationships be relationships where we cling on to the toxic things from our past that we weren't able to pass. So, in the sense that you may get with a person when you're in your 20s, right? And they may exhibit all the horrible things that a parent would have done to you, or someone that you don't like, whether it's talking to you harsh or treating you a particular way, right? And sometimes because we become comfortable in our trauma, we find it extremely hard to let that go. I mean, I've been in a relationship where I've had somebody who would have known she would have gotten the worst part of life from somebody. And even when she was getting the better part, she didn't feel like she was deserving of that. And so she kept on trying to go back, not realizing that. Yeah. And a lot of people suffer from that, even if you don't realize it, right? And a lot of us have trauma. So that's why I say getting to know us is a big deal, because once you know yourself, you know what you've been through, you know your trauma, you get past that, then you can see clearly for when you're looking for the other person. The X thing is off.
Good answer.
I love that answer so much.
Yeah, Fred.
So at this point of our podcast, we are going to make the floor open to our live audience. They have some juicy questions, and we have some very interesting answers.
Excuse me.
Okay, so thank you. I have a question. Earlier you guys mentioned that, we live in a generation where people find it hard to have boundaries. We stay very attached to people. Do you think it's wise for former lovers to be friends?
I personally don't, but let's hear what our panelists and pre have to say.
Okay,
That's problems brewing.
So I deal with that with him, right? He has a ex of his that's a really good friend of his that's also a really good friend of mine, right? And I feel like it's not a cookie cutter situation in the sense that that doesn't mean that just because they were exes that I locked them in.
Sorry. You said a cutter situation?
No, a cookie cutter. No, a cookie cutter. In the sense that everybody's situation is gonna be different. So you have to deal with the merit of that particular case, So I feel like she's a lovely individual. I love her to death. And I feel like, you know, she's happily married and I feel like them two have a very good, healthy relationship. So it is possible.
Where boundaries are
Where
respected.
boundaries are. And then there's also trust between me and him. Because, you know, you can't be thinking all the time something gonna happen between them two, you know? You give them time to be friends. So I think, yeah, it's a possibility.
That is tremendously mature. Like,
Yeah.
That is tremendously mature.
Yeah, me
No,
either.
that is tremendous.
I still feel, right, that not every ex deserves that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
People should be valued differently, right?
Yeah.
Some people deserve some, and some people don't deserve that.
Yeah.
Right? Because there are some exes that you need to put the boundary police
Yeah.
on them. Like they shouldn't even come around, right?
Yeah.
And then there are some that
I never see you again and be too soon.
Yeah. And then there's honesty too, because to be real, I've never caught him in any lie or trying to be dishonest or say, you know, when it comes to her, it's never nothing and it's never a way where he's saying, I can't be around or, you know what I mean? It's that also you have to respect your partner and make sure that the person who's your friend also respects your partner and the foothold they have in your life.
Absolutely. That's a good answer.
Love that answer. Do we have another question from our guests, our live audience?
Oh, yeah. The gallery.
Yeah.
Gallery.
Next week.
No.
In regards to something you said, do you think that a relationship, in regards to something you said earlier, do you think a relationship should continue if someone steps out one time?
Boy,
let's actually.
sweat a little bit just now.
I feel like
Because I get bad is.
again, everybody is different, right? So where someone may not be able to deal with someone that can gamble, right? Someone may be able to deal with somebody that may step out. Also, sometimes people step out. Every situation ain't the same. So what if, even if someone step out, the reason that they step out, right? Not saying that they was right for it, but it may be something that you can understand and it may be something that can change. I feel like you're people who step out, right? Consistently and constantly, right? For no good reason. And I ain't saying that it's right, but then there may be somebody who may make a mistake, as we do. Even someone may not cheat, but someone may spend all your money, or someone may burn down your house. You ain't gonna leave them for those things. You're gonna work through it, right? So, and I mean, I've been in a relationship too. I mean, in my last relationship, I had somebody that would have cheated on me numerous times, right? But I feel like I should have left, and let me leave it there, right? First, right? But in my mind, right, I felt like, you know, I watched my parents and I thought to myself, you know, I understand how a relationship should work, and I feel like everything don't deserve you just leaving for, right? You work through some things if it can be worked. But I'll tell you, if you try to work through it and it don't work, leave. You know, you can try if you think that it's worth trying for, but if it ain't working, leave. For me, in my last relationship, I feel like it became to a point where I felt so disrespected that even if she stopped, right, I couldn't sleep with myself. And I couldn't like myself if I was with her, because being with her made me feel as though I was less than myself. You know? Anyone who make you feel less than yourself, especially earlier you were saying, right, that God made us, right? So we made in God's image, right? If someone make you feel less than yourself, you let them go. That it ain't worth it. That's how I feel.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. That's good stuff.
Our next question.
If one partner doesn't believe in God, but you do spiritually, where should that relationship or marriage stand in life?
Unequally yoked. Unequally yoked.
Let's say that, you know, there has to be in any relationship, friendship, situationship, relationship, anything, there has to be common ground. And I think it's so important for you two establish what are non-negotiables and what you can negotiate through.
Boundaries.
So like, if you are an on the fence spiritual person, so and when I say spiritual person, I'm not just talking about coming to church. I mean, like, you're already on the God run.
Too
like
gaudy,
that.
yeah.
You believe in God. I also believe in aliens, but that's the point. You're not on the God run. I didn't mean that was an example. Although aliens are real. But you believe in God. You're really on the edge. But you believe in God. Now, if the person doesn't, that's in my mind, that's not a non-negotiable for you, because you're not passionately believing. You're not living in relationship to the divine God. But if you are a Christian, striving, trying, going to church, you are seeking to live in relationship with God, I find it difficult to join with someone, build relationship with someone that is anti-God. That just don't make sense to me, So I think that you kind of have to make that decision. I personally cannot be with a person like that, because it's every day is
Too conflicting.
It's too much of a conflict, because then if we get married, we have kids, how do we raise our children? How do we send them to Christian schools, or do we not? Do we pray in the mornings? Do we not? What happens when crisis comes, an accident happens? How do we navigate the vicissitudes of life? If the God factor, I smart it. If the God factor is not in there, so that's a part of the challenge for me.
I particularly like that question because about 2 years ago, I met someone and we were just like getting to know each other, the general questions. And in the Bahamas, most people they identify as Christians. So in my head, I'm thinking, he's a Christian, right? But I want to know which level he is in his spirituality. So I asked the question, and to my surprise, I find out he's an atheist.
Oh,
Wow.
So I'm like, okay,
That was awkward after that.
this is very different. You don't expect this in the Bahamas, but people have a right to believe in what or not. And then it hit me, I'm like, okay, so when we go on a date, we're not gonna pray over the food, right? These little things, before you even get to marriage and thinking about how do we raise our kids, just simple things like that. If I'm having a stressful day at work, is he gonna be like, okay, let's say a prayer, or he's gonna be like, I don't know, something, you know what I mean?
Let's pray to science or something like
that. Your aura, crystals, Exactly. So it was just so interesting. And like Father said, if that's important to you, and it is to me, I was like, well, you gotta go, buddy, because what you doing out here, And,
what you doing around?
Because what are we going to? We have no common ground.
But at least you have your boundaries set. That's really good. At least you know.
I have to, You have to as a woman.
And this is not judgment, but let me just say this. I have found, with people that I meet that are agnostic or atheists, is as a result of some trauma due to religion. And it's not as if they don't believe in God. They choose to dismiss God based on the trauma that they've experienced. So where was God
when this
happened to me? Or when I was doing this? Or when
I needed this.
Hurt me? Where was God?
Well, that's a segment by itself.
So, sometimes it is worth the conversation. And I'm not meaning you, Lauren. One size does not fit all, let's be honest. Sometimes it's worth the conversation. Well, how did you arrive at that? Like, growing up here, how did you move there? And then from there, make your assessment as to whether this is, maybe there's a trauma that this person needs to get past and I am willing to journey with them, or this is too much for me and
out of that.
Fair point.
Well, guys, this conversation has been productive. I know if we could have, we would go on all night. Because there's just so much there is to tackle. Just so many conversations to be had. But I would like to thank each of you for being here. I would like to thank everybody in the gallery for being so attentive. And I would just like to say that this has been Beyond the Pew, a Holy Cross production, where we get a youth perspective at the foot of the cross. And there are opportunities for you to worship with us. We hold Mass every Sunday, 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. and through the week. Father, would you like to speak through the week?
Yes, 6 o'clock on Tuesday mornings, a.m. if you early rise up, 12:30 on Wednesdays, midday service, 7 a.m. on Fridays. And it's 7 a.m. on Sundays, 9:30 a.m. on Sundays.
And every third Sunday is the Youth Corporate Mass. So come out, take one, reach one, let's do it, man. This has been Beyond the Pew.